I see it as a sort of traditional work of crime fiction, but in what I guess is a sort of a science fiction context or a science fiction background. So although it tracks over the course of the trilogy, each of the three books is a different kind of crime novel. The first one is a pretty traditional police procedural. The second one feels more like a private investigator kind of book, and the third one is, well, whatever the third one is. So they're all. I always imagined these as crime stories, with the sort of sci-fi elements being just a way of making the crime stories more interesting. So it was never an attempt to sort of consciously mash up crime and sci-fi. It was more an attempt to tell a crime story in a sort of unique way, in a new way. It seemed to me that this world was going to be very dark and very sort of, obviously kind of grim, with a lot of thought about death and about chaos and grief. And it felt to me it would be interesting, I think, if my hero was against that grain rather than with it. So, in other words, he is fun and he is exciting for us to follow because rather than being of a piece with that dark world around him, he is refusing to give into it. His whole strategy for dealing with this is to just kind of block it out and to continue to be what he is, which is someone who really believes in justice and I guess law enforcement and taking care of people. So it was just, I think it makes for a more textured book, a more rich kind of story, that Henry's not just another tough guy in a dark world. He is kind of a sweetheart and he's kind of a nice guy. And that makes him a little bit, it just makes everything more interesting, I think. I think, well, first of all, there have always been disaster stories. I think people have always been really curious about the end of things, going back to, the story of Noah and the Ark and, the book of Revelation. And, in every tradition, there are stories about the end of time. I think why it's so popular now, I'm not quite so sure. I think it can be very commercial. I think it can be an easy sale, because it's not complicated. It's a big story. There are big stakes. It's an opportunity for a lot of heroism and a lot of villainy. So there are big stories in there. And perhaps we live in something of an anxious time. Perhaps people are concerned about what is going on with our civilization, and certainly climate change might be part of that. So I think there is, on the one hand, a kind of permanent feature of our culture, the kinds of stories we tell, has to do with the end. And on the other hand, I think there might be something going on now that is making people concerned about it. I like Megan Abbott. I had a book called The Fever this summer. It was really good. There's a woman named Lauren Beukes, Beukes. Her new novel is called Broken Monsters. It's really cool and weird, and she's doing kind of like a horror and crime combo with that book. I read a book called Descent by this guy, Tim Johnston. I think it's his first novel, but I'm not sure. But it's about a child abduction. It's really powerful. I think a lot of authors are, as I've been trying to do, looking for ways to do different kinds of things with the crime or mystery structure. To sort of, like The Fever, this Megan Abbott book, it's about high school kids, and it's about sexuality, and it's about sort of group dynamics, and it's about violence, but it's within the structure of what's going on. It's within the structure of we're investigating what's happening with this kid. So you're asking these kind of traditional mystery kind of questions, but there is something else going on, whatever it is. And that's what excites me. That's what I really like about the great crime writers or mystery writers, is that there's some kind of philosophical or literary or metaphysical question that is underneath, just under the surface of the story, When I started reading, I read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi. I read Piers Anthony, and I read Orson Scott Card, and I read Robert Asprin, I think his name is. I read a lot of fantasy. I read the Philip Jose Farmer Riverworld series. I have very strong memories of reading that. And I actually recently reread the first one. I was like, oh, it isn't that good, but it's pretty good. When I was 12 and 13, I read, which again, I recently reread, the Wild Cards books, which is an anthology of sort of speculative science fiction that was edited by George R. R. Martin, actually, who is now very well known as the Game of Thrones author. So I read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, and then I think as I got older, I got into, I remember I got really into Dickens really young, like in my late teens and early 20s, and I remained very into Dickens, just as a sort of consummate creator of memorable characters and consummate plot maker. And those are skills that I really value in a writer. Not just beautiful lyrical sentences, but really strong characters, really quickly and well defined, and a lot of interesting things going on in the story. Well, I don't know if this counts, but I would call on Tom Ripley from Patricia Highsmith's The Talented Mr. Ripley and its sequels, because although he is a sociopath, and although he is evil, evil to his core, Tom Ripley is the consummate problem solver, and all that he does over the course of those books is do terrible things, and then find ways to get out of them. So I think if I was in a bad situation, I think I would call Tom Ripley, and then I would be terrified because I would owe him something. Exposition, really clunky exposition. I think it's something that writers generally work their way out of as you grow as a writer, as you become more careful with your work. I hate scenes where a character just comes into the crime scene and says, "Well, as the senior investigator here, it's important that I say the following," and it's like nobody says that. If all the characters who are present on the page already know the information, there's no reason for that information to be announced other than the writer's need for the reader to know it. What the good writer learns is that readers are patient, and they will follow even if they don't know everything. They will keep up with you, and it's better to leave stuff out and let us wonder about it than it is to tell us everything because you're worried that we don't know. So that's what often bothers me. And then just sort of cliches. I'm always caught up on the page by someone using a very familiar phrase or a very easy description, of something. I think what we love in writing is when we are surprised, whether it's by story or by word choice or by some detail of a character. So anything that doesn't surprise, even if it's at the level of using a kind of boring idiom or simile, anything that doesn't surprise us is not, is boring.
Yeah, well, when you think about the time and how it stretches backwards, does it follow a particular shape in your imagination? Or do you think about it that way?
I think a road, to me, it's a road, right? Like if you think about the journey of your life, and there's a whole nother set of metaphors about we're traveling on the journey of the path of life, or we're walking down this road, two roads diverge in a wood, et cetera, right? So like if you look back on your life, it's like, what is the journey that I have followed? And those are the years of your life that lay out behind you. And what's interesting is they also lay out in front of you. You just don't know how far, you don't know how many miles of road you've got left, right? You don't know how much sand is left in the hourglass or whatever the metaphor is. And so anyway, so it sort of feeds into the larger theme of the book, which is like, how do we think about the hours of our lives? And literally, what are they worth to us?
Have you found just in your own personal life that you've had to take steps to reclaim your time, reclaim your life?
I mean, constantly. I actually, as I've been thinking about this book, and especially since I've been talking about it with people, like I actually think in a way, it's like the primary relationship in our lives is what is our relationship to time? How do we think about the hours of our life? And like, you know, with stuff like social media, it's such a cliche at this point to be like, oh my God, it's such a waste of time. And there is value to it, to connecting with friends, to learning information, all that stuff. But we all know that it's also sort of ruthlessly designed to take our time from us, right? And like when they talk about their metric for success on their end is how many minutes of attention can we draw from people. We are literally paying them with the hours of our life. And like that's kind of creepy when you really think about it. Like Ben Winters will only get so many hours to walk around on this earth and do things and learn things and give to other people. And like, and like here I am shoveling over these minutes into Instagram or whatever it is. It's like, that's interesting, so yeah, I think about it a lot. It's a struggle, especially as someone who, like, I work for myself in general. My work is project based. I am only paid on delivery of a finished manuscript. You get the advance, whatever. It's like, so I'm always thinking about like, how long is this going to take? What is the best use of my time today? What projects might potentially be of value? Whereas which projects are you kind of taking a flyer on? It's like all that stuff.
Tell us a little bit about what's going on with TV and Hollywood, some of those projects that you're working on?
Oh yeah. Well, the big thing is this show Tracker, which is based on Jeffrey Deaver's novel, The Never Game, which I wrote the pilot, and now it's on. So I'm an executive producer on the show, and it's on CBS on Sunday nights, and it's a big
Wow.
hit. We just got picked up for season 2. So here, if you haven't seen it, I hope people will tune in. I'm really proud of it. And if you know Jeff Deaver at all, he's the nicest guy, and it's
Oh,
a great.
yeah.
He's just been he's been
Wonderful.
great about it. Yeah, it's really fun.
I'm sure some of your books been optioned.
Oh, yes, they have. And I've written pilots based on The Last Policeman. I wrote a pilot based on Golden State, but none of them have made it to air yet. I think that it's interesting because the experience of adapting Jeff's book and having it go has taught me a ton that I think will be useful to me as I move forward in my career and my attempts to get my own stuff on air. It's just like there's really interesting. There's a very complex and tricky process of turning a book into a show, and I think I've learned a ton from this. So we'll see. See what happens next time around.
Cool. I have a question from a first-time author who would like to know
right.
if you have any advice on writing scenes.
Just in general?
Maybe just in general.
I mean, every scene, don't forget, you have to ask yourself, what does this person want and how are they trying to get it? Right? Like in every human interaction, like just don't forget there has to be a point of view. And by point of view, I mean like someone is after something. They're trying to do something, whether they're trying to seduce someone or threaten someone or bully someone or charm someone. Like a lot of times in a detective story, they're trying to get information. How are they trying to do it? Or they're trying to like steal something. How are they trying to do it? What is the motive of the scene? I think when things are flat, it's because the author doesn't know what these characters are trying to accomplish in this moment.
What is your writing process? Like, are you in the mornings, afternoon, standing in your head, what?
Yeah, all of it, all of it. My ideal process is when I don't have anything else to do in a given day. Because sometimes the hardest thing is just finding the time, right? Because it's so easy to do anything else. So, and I'm also fortunate enough that my main job now is writing. The hardest part is if you have what they derisively call a day job, or like a regular job, and you have to find the hours. Ideally I write in the morning, for a couple of hours or a few hours, if I'm lucky, of productive time. So that if at all possible, it's really helpful to clear out like a solid block of time, to not be like, oh, I'm going to work for half an hour and then I'm going to answer emails, and be like, no, like if you can corral a 2-hour block, even where it's all you're doing is writing. And like, it's at this point, it's almost a cliche thing to say, but like, don't be on the internet. There's a program that I got called Freedom. It's an app that blocks you from going online, and you set it for a certain number of minutes. And like, I swear, of all the writing advice I've ever gotten of every form, like using this thing is the most helpful, because like, it's like being an alcoholic. I'm like, I know that I'm helpless. I know that if I can go online, I'm just going to be online. I'll write a sentence. I'm like, I can't think of the next one. Maybe I'll just check my email, and then I'll check whatever stupid. I'll read a newspaper article, and I'll go on Facebook. It's like, and then you've suddenly lost, 45 minutes of time. And like, time is so precious. So force yourself to stay offline. Be fierce about the time. Like, it is really easy both to decide you're going to do something else, but also to be like, your friends are like, oh, we should go out and get lunch, or, oh, do you want to go see a movie, or do you just have 10 minutes to come over and look at something? It's like, no. Just be like, no. Like, be a little bit of an asshole. Be like, because it's so important. Like, that time is so important. And especially if you're not yet a published author, if you are not yet don't have a deadline, you have to be the only one who cares. Like, nobody else gives a shit if you finish your book or not. You have to give a shit so much. I'm sorry to be rude about it, but like, you just have to care so much. So it's like, you have to treat it like it's real before anybody else does. And that can be really hard. And even now, like I published a bunch of books. Every time I start, I'm like, is this going to be good? I don't know. Like, you just have to pretend it's going to be good until it is. There's a quote, and I always forget who it is, but I said it a lot. It's not mine, but it's, time is what we want most and use worst.
Like we're always like, oh, if I just had enough time, like, oh, I'm running out of time. And it's like, you have time. You're like, I'm check my email. It's like, no one is emailing you. Nothing matters. Don't get sucked down those holes.
There's mystery, but you also include kind of some speculative elements in them too. So how do you balance them, or how do you, are you aware of that while you're doing it and trying to balance them, or is it just kind of come out as it comes out?
Well, there's this precise formula. It's 62% speculative and 48%. No, I don't know. Basically, it's just worked out that way in this weird way. Like with Last Policeman, that was the mystery novel that I really wanted to write. And basically, I honestly was like, I really want to write a detective novel. What will be a way for me to do it that will make it interesting and something that we haven't really seen before? I was like, oh, well, what if there's a giant asteroid coming? It's going to destroy all life on Earth. And there's 1 year left. And my guy is solving murders anyway. Well, that'll be interesting. That'll be a good cover. And that'll get people to read it. And then as I was writing it, I was like, oh, wait a sec. I've sort of turned this into an existential, a novel of philosophy of like, what is the point of doing anything? Mm-hmm. Like, we're all going to die, right? So like, well, how do we make the decisions we make? And I was like, oh, this is actually cool. I suddenly had accidentally given myself a kind of career path or what, I don't know. Well, that's a little too schematic, but I was suddenly like, oh, this is interesting. So from that point on, it was sort of like with airlines, I was like, how can I think or write about this terrible fact of slavery and of the racism that has emerged from it? How can I write about it in as a thriller? Like, how do you do that? It's like, oh, well, by using this speculative element. So I have just found that braiding the two things together comes out with something cool generally. And in terms of the balance, it finds itself, I think, is the short answer. I think it finds itself.